I have had the opportunity to cheat in the sport of CrossFit many times over. We're going to talk about steroids and performance enhancing drugs within the sport of CrossFit. This year we've had 14 positive drug tests already. That's 14 athletes, or more actually, because a couple of them were in teams that are not going to the games. That seems like a hell of a lot, and we're seeing a lot of it on all of the CrossFit media. However, today it was interesting to find out that actually in 2018 there were 17 drug bans, which is slightly more. I think we're just noticing it more this year because there's a lot more media coverage. I am really naive on this topic and I don't know a whole lot about steroids at all. I have been to lots of different CrossFit gyms and I've never witnessed or experienced anybody around me doing any form of PED. Obviously they probably wouldn't tell me if they were, but I've never been offered it. I've never heard about it. I've never seen any evidence in my limited knowledge of people doing it. So I went to my social media following, and I have a slightly big Instagram following, so I know I'm going to get quite a broad range of opinions from them. My followers are athletes, CrossFitters, a lot of people inside CrossFit and some people outside of CrossFit as well in sports like powerlifting and just general functional training. So the first thing I wanted to gauge was whether people think this is just the odd few causing an issue and trying to sneak through, or whether they think it's a big problem and literally everybody is doing it, which I know some people believe because that's the kind of hate you get with CrossFit. They're like, oh, everyone's on steroids, which is ridiculous. And then third, whether it's a big problem, like maybe around 50-50, whether they think a large amount of the athletes are doing it and then they're covering it up really well. So the biggest percentage of people thought it was around 50-50, so a large quantity of people taking PEDs within the sport of CrossFit. Now that is a problem, and I'm not sure whether that's just an assumption or whether people have actually witnessed it. And then the second largest opinion was that most people are clean and it's just the odd few giving a bad example for the rest of us. And that's the box that I sit in. If I was going to vote on my own poll, that's where I would vote, because I've always believed that the majority of CrossFit athletes are clean, and a lot of them do speak up out against taking steroids very frequently. And then a much smaller 17% thought that literally everybody is on steroids, which for me I think is a bit of an over exaggeration. Obviously I'm not, and a lot of the people I know that do CrossFit are not, and I know a lot of people that do CrossFit at a competitive level. And I think if everybody was taking PEDs there would be a lot more positive tests. And then I also asked for people's opinions on this, and a lot of interesting ones came back. Obviously we can't know whether these are factual or whether people are just making assumptions about this, but I think it really shows that we might have a bit of an issue on a box level. We've got one woman here who says, it widens the gap between scaled and elite in my box. There has been a lot of people before that have looked at me, seen how heavy I can lift and assumed that I'm taking steroids, which is ridiculous because that's just an assumption. And obviously I train hard, I eat a lot. We don't often see muscular females out and about in the world, and I think when you're a scaled athlete or when you're just starting, it's easy to look at people that are super jacked and just assume that they're on steroids. And we can't take that as true because it is possible to get very muscular and very strong without taking steroids. But this person also might have witnessed it or have some sort of proof. A couple of other people have said that it started to make them question whether a lot of the other athletes are clean or whether they're just taking things that mask PEDs. And this is something that has been brought up to me as well by a couple of people within the community that are more competitive than me, and they've said that they believe that more of the population are taking some form of performance enhancing drug and then something that masks that, so stops it from appearing in tests on top of that. So that's an issue. Obviously it's a real problem and it must be really disappointing for those that have been beaten by people that were on some form of substance that had helped their performance. It's not okay in my eyes. CrossFit is supposed to be a clean sport and that kind of behaviour shouldn't be happening. But the question is, how do we clamp down on this more? And how do we stop it being normalised within our sport? So this one came up quite a lot. People are basically saying it's those people that believe they aren't good enough, and also they believe that other people are taking them. So often you'll hear people say everybody in CrossFit is on steroids and that you have to take them to get them to the top level. They believe that people like Matt Fraser and Tia Toomey, that everybody is on steroids. And if those people are elite or they're on the edge of being elite, I think that can make them take that gamble because they believe everybody is already doing it. I really liked this comment. I'd rather not win and know I've done my best than do better but knowing it's not all my own hard work. I think that's the bottom line in this, really. So I have this analogy. I have had the opportunity to cheat in the sport of CrossFit many times over. This is in competition, and so what happens is the judge will look at my bar and they'll calculate the number that they think in their head, and they'll tell me the number that they think is on the bar. They've overestimated. They've calculated slightly more than is actually on my bar. Now I have two choices. Do I lie and say yes and take one for the team and try and use that to win, or do I say no and correct them and tell them the weight that's actually on the bar, because I wouldn't want to win based off of lying and cheating. Now, that has happened to me so many times over, and there's never been a single time where I've gone with the lie. I have never once cheated when I've been given the opportunity to cheat. And as well, in workouts as well. Sometimes they'll count the amount of reps that you've done, and they will say that you've done more than you have. I will always correct them. And I get messages like this sometimes, people saying, oh, but if you had the opportunity to win, wouldn't you take it? And the answer for me is honestly no. Like, if I knew I could take a certain performance enhancing drug and win the CrossFit Games, would I take it? No, because that wouldn't be my hard work. I wouldn't be proud of myself. There would always be part of it that was down to a substance and not me. And I know you still have to work hard if you take performance enhancing drugs, but it just wouldn't sit right with me. CrossFit is supposed to be a clean sport, and we respect athletes for that, and that is part of the cool thing of seeing what the human body can do without specific enhancements. However, I think those people that think like that think given the opportunity to win, everybody would take it. Those people asking me that question assume that they're right. They assume that every single person in the room would take the opportunity to win, even if it meant cheating. And I think that's the problem. It's thinking that everybody's on them, it's thinking anybody will do anything to win, and they're believing that their own internal beliefs is actually the belief system of everybody else. And that's not true. I feel like almost if we do have an increase in people taking performance enhancing drugs in CrossFit, it's because people are starting to believe that everybody's doing it. So why don't they just jump on the bandwagon and help push them slightly over the line? Another interesting point that a friend made who does compete in CrossFit, they're very good at CrossFit, they pointed out the fact that a lot of these people that have been caught for banned substances are on the cut line. So they're not the top level elite athletes. They're not Tia Toomey or Man O'Brien or any of them. They are people that have just scraped through. So it might be that they felt like they're not good enough and they didn't trust their training. Therefore, they took some sort of substance to push them over that line. And they thought that they could get away with it because maybe in their head they believe that everybody else is getting away with it. Whereas actually, my personal belief is that the majority of the top level athletes are clean. Yes, there are the odd few, like Ricky Garrard, who was tested, he failed, and he's now served his ban, and he will be competing again this year, which is really interesting. But overall, I don't believe it's a huge problem with the top level elite athletes. I think there needs to be some accountability, and I do think we need to crack down on this. And the way that I think we should do this is to make sure that we are testing throughout the season. At the moment, it appears that CrossFit are only testing athletes at sanctioned events, whereas in other sports like Olympic weightlifting, you can be tested at any point in the year. You have to register where you're going to be with WADA so that they can just turn up. That's how it works. I think we should have something similar to that, so that athletes have less of a chance of cycling on and off performance enhancing drugs. From the comments that I've had, a lot of people do agree with that. Obviously, I think that will take a lot more funding, it might use a lot more money, but I think ultimately it'll be worth it to make sure the sport is clean. We want to continue to be able to claim that this is a clean sport because it's supposed to be. So we need to make sure that we're testing to catch those people out that maybe are taking anything that's enhancing their performance. I also forgot to mention that they all seem to be testing positive for this GW1516, which is clearly some sort of substance that they've all decided to take, or maybe it was something that used to be not on the banned list but now is. I thought that was a bit interesting. Pretty much every single athlete that's tested positive has blamed it on a tainted substance or a medication that they were taking that was tainted or had something in it that they didn't believe. I think there's one guy that admitted to it. Well done him. There was Phil Toon who blamed it on the hair follicle stuff. There was the guy in CrossFit Aylesbury that said that his supplement was tainted. I can't find this statistic anywhere else myself, but somebody told me, and they did quote where it's from, but I now can't find the DM, that blaming a positive test on a tainted supplement is the most popular excuse. And it is quite an easy way to make it seem like you're telling the truth. Whereas actually, I'm not sure what it's like in America, but those that tested positive in the UK, supplements are quite rigorously tested. We also have something called Informed Sport, and I think that's worldwide. And anything that's Informed Sport certified, like, that doesn't contain anything. It has been tested and checked. From what I've heard, the tainted supplement excuse really doesn't fly in the UK because of how many tests foods have to go through before they get to the consumer, and also because we don't have a large production of performance enhancing drugs within the warehouses of places that make other supplements that we take, because it's not as popular. It might be more popular in the US, and maybe that's why they've adopted that excuse, but it actually doesn't work as well if you're from the UK. And also the medication excuse, like, medications go under so many different tests. There is no way someone has got a tainted medication. There might be a chance that it had something in it that they didn't realise was banned, but an athlete should know every single thing that they're putting in their body. I have known athletes from other sports outside of CrossFit, and if you compete in anything that is tested, then you check every single thing that goes into your body. And if anything is at all risky, then you don't take it. And that, obviously, if you're an elite athlete, that is the kind of attitude you have to take towards consuming things. So I don't for one second believe that most of these people have actually taken a tainted substance. It seems like it was probably intentional. And I do wonder whether it's because they're of this belief that all of the elite athletes above them are taking steroids, which I think isn't true. But they've probably just shot themselves in the foot by convincing themselves that everybody is on steroids. It's not helped by people outside of CrossFit saying we're on steroids, and I think that's just because people look at what CrossFitters can do and they don't believe that it's possible. They see women with massive muscles and they're just not used to it, so in their head the only way that they can justify it is by saying they must be on steroids. And it's the same with strength. Women being extremely strong, like, the stronger I got, the more accusations I got that I had been taking steroids. It's crazy. The accusations need to stop. What we really need to do is test better within the sport, and then we will know for sure. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Do you think we have an issue? I'd love to hear your opinion. Do you think I'm really naive thinking all of the top athletes aren't? Thank you for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next one.